So then the second step we said is to audit the system. What skills are going to be required? What specific skills for this system are going to be required to execute it well? And breaking that down into 4 areas or groups. So you've got technical skills. So if we work on a sport such as Australian football, kicking, handball, marking, but what types of kicks? Short, long, what type of marking situations? Tactical, so really talking about decisions. What decisions need to be made with and without the ball? Okay, so on and off ball decision making, tactical knowledge, awareness is required to make that system work. From a physical point of view, is it a high energy, high intensity system that you're playing that requires good aerobic capacity? And mentally, we won't touch on that too much, but there's a lot of things that go into the mental component or skills required to make a system work. One of the key ones is what I'd call this team first culture or attitude amongst your group. When to execute a system, players need to play their roles and at times forego personal glory, if you like, or attention for the sake of helping the team or to make that system function well. And how you go about engendering this team first culture is a really important step as well. And this is probably a whole separate topic in itself. Culture, leadership, player management, communication, it all falls in under this one step. So I won't expand on that any further, but it's really important that that's in place if you expect your system to be successful. So going about the audit, this is an example of a template that you could use. So here's some skill sets we've listed down the side here on the left. The next column across is what category or group they fall into, as we just saw on the previous slide. And then some things like how important is it to the system functioning well? Okay. And then if you've had your group or you're familiar with your playing group, is where are they currently at with that skill set? What's their competency? So if you see a couple of highs here, so if the importance to the system is high, if you see importance to the system is high and current competency is low, already you'd say there's a skill that we need to focus on in our teaching stage coming up next. Okay, if it's low importance and you've got high competency already, well, that's probably going all right. You don't need as much focus. So immediately you're starting to see where your priorities might lie when it comes to teaching and training. And one optional one is prerequisite skills. So before you can move on to long versus short pass decision making, you might say as a coach, our playing group needs to get good at just executing the technical aspect of short passes. Okay. As a coach, you might have a different philosophy on whether you integrate the decision making and the technical together, which I recommend you do, or saying that no, we just work on technical skills separately. So that's what an audit template might look like. And then the third stage was the teaching stage, and this is really important. So this is a quote from Tex Winter, supposedly the brains behind the famous triangle offense that the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers have won many, many championships with. And he made this comment, and I think it's a really important one, and it ties back into what I said in step 1 about understanding your system. If you don't understand it, you can't teach it. And this copycat effect, it's not what the system is sometimes, it's how you go about teaching it and then how well your players can execute it. And there's many things that sit under this. So you've got Tex Winter here in the middle, Phil Jackson, the head coach on the left, and obviously a reasonably famous athlete, and Michael Jordan on the right. So this picture captures a good dynamic across coaches, and there's good story behind the triangle offense. So Tex Winter was the architect of it, supposedly, the brains behind how the system, implementing it, how it's taught. Phil Jackson had a really important role in terms of what we talked about, that team first culture is getting players such as this guy here to buy into the system. Initially he wouldn't, because in his eyes he saw that the ball was going to be out of his hands more and in the hands of maybe lesser players. But Phil Jackson's role in selling to Michael Jordan that if he bought into the system, that team success would follow, was an important one, and he did, and history shows what success Chicago ended up having, and I'm sure he went through a similar process probably with Kobe Bryant as well. So teaching. So important things we talk about under the teaching section. Planning is always important. So when it comes to planning what you're going to teach, what skill sets you're going to train, whether that's on or off the field, is to have a plan for a phase. So that phase could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever your training, off-season, pre-season time looks like will vary in every coaching situation. But planning a phase of training and what your focus is going to be for that phase. Then obviously getting down to each individual session is what's going to be in there. And also then trying to review as thoroughly as you can in your situation each training session, so that you're tracking how well you're teaching those concepts, how well the players are picking them up, and then any fine tuning that needs to be done for subsequent sessions or phases. In terms of on-field teaching, so this is really your drills and training activities on the pitch or court or oval. Drill design, obviously important. Game-based training we hear a lot about these days. It's fairly well known that game-based training needs to be a big part, and particularly in implementing a system. And in the book we talk about manipulating constraints in the training activity to guide players' behaviour to what you want it to be. So it could be change of rules, change of playing density, attackers up, numbers up, numbers down, how you score in your drill or activity. Manipulating all these constraints. Fatigue is a constraint, weather conditions are a constraint. Manipulating these things to guide and shape the behaviours or outcomes you want for that activity to achieve the concept and to get players to learn and understand the concept. And then off-field, these days with technology, off-field can play a large part still in your teaching at many high-performance levels. The on-field training time has reached its max, as in players physically can't really be asked to do much more, but there can be ways to still learn and teach your system off the field that come at a low physical cost, but players are still getting better and improving. So things like e-learning, which can be as simple as putting video examples online for players to look at, considering learning styles in how you coach and present in your team meetings, or how you put content online for your players, and video review meetings as well. There's some important things that we mention in the book about how you structure your meetings, things like time of the day, group size, how long they are before you have breaks or changes in topics, how to make them interactive versus the coach standing up the front just telling and using the stand and deliver approach, instead of getting all the players involved and participating in the meeting in a collaborative way. So that's the teaching stage, and really this is where what I've learned in terms of learning is some of these things. Is when you get to this teaching stage, it's not going to be a linear approach where the players get better and better and it's a straight improvement line. There's going to be ups and downs, and it's going to look messy, and there's going to be mistakes, and it's going to take time. Okay, and I've related a story of my little boy again when we came to toilet training for him. I remember we started him on a Monday. We went cold turkey. We said, no more nappies, mate. You got to tell us when you need to go to the toilet. That went terribly for days on end, 2, 3, 4 days. He really wasn't getting it. By the 5th day, he was in tears on the toilet. He didn't know where he was meant to be going, when he was meant to be going. My partner and I are starting to pull our hair out, thinking we've stuffed this up, we've done it all wrong. Everything's going downhill, it's worse. And then suddenly he wakes up the next morning, said he needed to go to the toilet, hopped on the toilet, did his business, and hasn't looked back since. So for me, that was a really good example of how learning often occurs in coaching too. It's messy, and it certainly was messy at times. You got number 1 and 2s all over the floor. We felt like we were going backwards, or that Sam was going backwards, not getting better. Yet all of a sudden, everything clicks and we make progress. So that's just something to consider in this teaching phase. It requires patience and real focus on what you're trying to achieve with certain concepts or developing your system.